when I put my entrepreneur cap on and I took the emotion and the fear, all the emotional stuff out of it, and I just got logical and I put on that thinking cap that's the logical thinking cap, I really strongly believed that the story was an asset. I could market that.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Just let go. About a year ago, my husband and I watched a movie called Molly's Game, which is a true story about a 26-year-old woman behind the most exclusive, high-stakes underground poker game in the world, and it's a crazy story. We watched this true story. It stars Jessica Chastain, who plays Molly. Also, Aaron Sorkin directed it. We have Kevin Costner, who's also in the film. And so we finished watching this film one night, and I said to Richard, I want to get Molly on the podcast. So I sent her a direct message on Twitter right then and there. This was more than a year ago. And then just kind of forgot about it. But I thought, how cool to get to speak with this woman who has lived this crazy journey, which you will hear, because a couple of months ago, I hear back. I had forgotten that I had direct messaged her, and she got the direct message and sure enough responded and said, sure, I'll come on the podcast. So here we are having a chat today about her journey. Molly's path is all about reinvention and resilience. The things that she has been through and the things that she has done are quite unbelievable. She was a cocktail waitress and a personal assistant back in 2004. And one day her boss said to her, I need your help tonight running this poker game. So she started Googling, what do poker players like to listen to? And she added things like The Gambler on her mixed CD. She got cheese plates, and she shows up at the Viper Room, which is very famous in Los Angeles. And here are some of the biggest stars. All of these people are frequenting these games, these poker games, underground poker games. So she starts learning more about the game itself and how to make sure that their experience was what they wanted, to be able to just play and enjoy themselves. And the next thing you know, she starts doing this on her own, and she gets a little ahead of herself, let's just say. She ends up moving to New York City after a sequence of events and builds another poker tournament. The buy-in is $250,000 just to buy in. She said one evening she saw one man lose $100 million in one night, and he actually ended up paying it the next day. Long story short, not everything was above board, and she ended up getting caught up in some legal drama, and she became a felon. Now, what she did after that is what's most interesting to me, and the process she went through to pick herself back up from nothing. She says, I wasn't even at ground zero. I was below that. What she did to reinvent herself is pretty incredible. The lessons she's learned and what she's able to share in this episode can be applied to anyone that feels like they have gone through failure. And Molly is a pretty incredible entrepreneur, building a multi-million-dollar business on her own very quickly. And she has a lot of entrepreneurial advice that makes a ton of sense. So she went from thinking she might end up in prison to actually going to the Oscars a few years later because her story became a film and it was nominated for an Academy Award. What I love about this is she takes 100% responsibility for everything that she did wrong, and she learned from it. The transformation is truly incredible. I took a ton away from this conversation with Molly, and I hope you do too. So we are about to hop into that conversation, but beforehand, just a quick reminder, we do have a private Facebook group for the Why Not Now show. I am getting ready to record a solo podcast episode answering questions that have been left for me in this private group. So we have all types of exclusive things going on in the group, and it's become such a cool community where everyone is supporting each other with their own Why Not Now ideas, Why Not Now projects, and I just dig it. So if you want in, head on to Facebook and just search for Why Not Now private group and request to join us, and we'll let you in. Being able to design my own day and do it in the most efficient way is a non-negotiable for me. I'm a bit of a time management nerd, so when I find something that allows me to be more efficient and effective to get the most out of my day, I want to share it with everyone. So here's the scoop. I have a new tool in my productivity tool belt, and it's called Monday.com. My team and I have never felt more organized professionally and personally. And my to-do list is no longer the boss of me. I feel more in control because every project, initiative, date, and task is captured and organized in one place. And my team is in the loop and involved every step of the way. We are in lockstep. Monday.com is like having a brand new operating system. Everything has its own home, deadline. You can see the team members associated with the tasks, and it's color coordinated, so you can easily navigate your own task list. We all have multifaceted jobs, businesses, and lives. With Monday, you're able to keep all of these components organized in their own compartments, but you're also one click away from seeing the big picture and how they all integrate together. Creating systems and procedures within your day and business saves a lot of time. For example, my team and I have a dedicated Monday.com board for this very podcast. Did you know that there are 28 steps involved in getting one podcast ready for air? It's the same exact process every single time. And it's a system that we have put into place. So we know the various key steps are assigned to certain people, and we've mapped out the entire process from start to finish within this one board. This allows us to be streamlined. It cuts back on the amount of emails exchanged as well as the amount of meetings needed. One feature I love is that my social media content calendar is built inside of Monday.com. I finally have one that I actually use, I like, and it's embedded into my overall calendar as well. Another feature we use every single day is the Google Doc integration. You know I love a good spreadsheet. I can pull them into Monday.com and edit them right there versus having 97 tabs open on my computer, which is extremely distracting and inefficient. If how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, then I can't think of anything more important than using the time in our days wisely. Head to hey.monday.com/Amy Jo Martin to start your free trial today. That's hey.monday.com/Amy Jo Martin. Molly, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start off where we usually do. And can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now? But given the nature of your journey, if you could, you might even just start with a bit of a movie trailer to give us some context.
So I was raised in a family of incredibly high achievers. My middle brother is a Harvard-educated cardiothoracic surgeon. My youngest brother is a 2-time Olympian, 6-time world champion skier, who then sort of went casually to the NFL Combine and got drafted 5th round of Philadelphia Eagles.
As you do.
So unfortunately, this was my dinner table. And I kind of spent most of my childhood feeling like I needed to accomplish something really big to matter as well. And so the first place I did that is I made the U.S. ski team. And I also went to the University of Colorado and, got really good grades and a high LSAT score. And, I thought I had my whole life mapped out, like, Olympic skier and then law school and da-da-da-da. And I got injured, which set off a very bizarre set of life circumstances. I got injured. I crashed pretty hard at the Olympic qualifier, and I had to retire from skiing. And so I decided to take a year off of school and skiing and life in general because I was pretty heartbroken. And I went to Los Angeles and had to get a waitressing job immediately and a personal assistant job. And at my job, I was asked one night if I could serve drinks for my boss's home poker game. And I thought, okay, no problem. How hard can this be? And it turns out that, the players were Ben Affleck, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire, the head of the biggest bank in the world, the head of the, just like on and on and on, these crazy, larger than life people. And that really was an intriguing place to be for the network capabilities, et cetera. And also for the just insane business education I was getting by being privy to this inside information, So anyway, I went on to sort of see how I could turn it into a business. And so for the next 8 years, I started and ran the biggest poker games in the world in New York City and Hollywood. I made millions of dollars. My network was insane. And along the way, it was a lot of money, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of sort of larger than life surreal experiences. And I really lost myself. And I ended up breaking the law and got federally indicted and arrested by 17 FBI agents and thrown into this pretty crazy kind of takedown of underground gambling. And I had a choice to make. The prosecutors wanted me to roll on the people that played in my games and give inside information. And they said if I did that, they would give all my money back, which they had seized, and it was millions of dollars. And they would give me immunity, but if I didn't, I was going to go to jail. And so that was this sort of watershed moment where I decided if I was really about it. And what I mean by about it was what's more important to me at this point in my life, like money or integrity. And, losing everything had been kind of good for me in a way. So anyway, I chose to not tell on people. And I got sentenced and I became a convicted felon. I didn't have to go to jail, thankfully. And then I had, a sort of another moment where I was like, okay, so I'm 33 years old. I'm a convicted felon. I'm millions of dollars in debt. I have the most terrible things being said about me in the tabloids. Do I stay down and stay hiding in Colorado in the mountains with my mom? Or do I try to get back up, dust myself off, own my mistakes and make something out of this, And the way that I guess ultimately what I sought to do was to tell my story. So here we are.
And wow, you're able to do that in just a few minutes. I don't. So to fill in a few of the colorful details too, and I mean, you were playing at such a level and you started when you were 23 and built this business and this brand. And there's so many parallels to entrepreneurship and to business, which are obvious, especially when it comes to the resilience factor, not once, twice, 3 times or more. Because first you had your skiing accident, which completely derailed your trajectory. And then the first poker game just kind of debacle in LA, and then you moved it to New York, and you just kind of had this trend of starting over, but also your ability to network and build community. For those of you listening, so Molly's story is not only did she write a book, but then there was a movie called Molly's Game that came out. And that's what prompted me to reach out to you a couple of years ago on Twitter. After watching the movie, literally with my husband, I DM'd you. And here we are. It's fascinating to look at how you've reinvented more than once. And, I don't use that term lightly. It's literally looked very differently. And so if there was a why not now moment, there are millions, I'm sure, but which one stands out to you the most where you were navigating from idea to action?
Well, I guess what's coming to mind is the moment where I decided that the story would save me and the story was the new product. Because I was so ostracized by the communities and the network that I had built. It was kind of like, in the movies when you walk by and people whisper, it was like that, because I had gone from having this very powerful position of running and being the bank for the biggest, high stakes gambling operation that Wall Street titans and politicians and celebrities played in. And it was, this game had so much command over their life and I had command over the game. So I went from literally making millions of dollars and being in this power position to being someone who they wouldn't return the phone calls. And so I had to, at that point, I wasn't at ground zero, I was underground. And there was this moment where I was like, do I just stay safe in my mom's house and try to live this life that's small and sort of, not brave? Or do I go for it? Because what I had landed on, when I put my entrepreneur cap on, and I took the emotion and the fear and the shame and all the emotional stuff out of it, and I just got logical, and I put on that sort of thinking cap that's the logical thinking cap, I really strongly believed that the story was an asset, that I could market that. And that might be the answer to repairing my reputation, to my massive financial issues, and to giving me a fresh start. And it was like, as entrepreneurs, when we see something, we can't unsee it. We know it if it has value. We know it in our guts. But it was this huge risk. There were so many powerful people that did not want a book or a movie about what happened, because they had a fear that I was going to out everyone, and that was never what I was going to do. So I knew it was a sort of David and Goliath endeavor for sure. But I also knew that a long time ago at that dinner table, I had made a decision that I wanted a significant life no matter what, no matter how much work it took, no matter how many times I had to get back up. I didn't have the natural talent that my brothers did, but I've made that choice a really long time ago. And that no matter what type attitude is what has carried me. So long-winded answer is I knew the story was unique, and I really believed that if I built it in the right way, it would have a good shot at getting me out. So I learned about the publishing industry. I learned about the movie industry. I figured out the right way to structure deals. I found out how to have as much leverage as I could, how to maximize my revenue streams. For instance, you want to own your IP, right? My story was in the public medium. Anyone could have feasibly written about it. But if I had a book, it made it more difficult. So I started with the book. I wrote the book, and then I looked at Hollywood, and I took about 100 meetings. And after those 100 meetings, what I realized is the very limited resources in Hollywood are a good story, good content, and great writing. Then I started looking at ways to reduce the risk of and increase the probability that I would have a successful project. And my personal taste led me to Aaron Sorkin, because he was one of my favorite writers in Hollywood. I really loved The West Wing, and I loved The Social Network. And then I started looking at the sort of running the numbers on him, if you will, and seeing which projects he's taken on and if they've become successful. And they all have. They all made noise. They all did well at the box office, and most of them had award noms. So I was like, okay, that's my guy, And so I went around to Hollywood and to managers and agents and lawyers, and I was like, who can get me a meeting with Aaron Sorkin? And most people said no. one can and laughed at me or said things like, well, I don't think Sorkin's going to write the movie about the poker princess, or told me about all the powerful people that would never let this movie get made. But, I'd lost everything and I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I checked the ego and I was like, so what you're saying to me is you can't get me a meeting? You know what I mean? Like, let's do this, it's a yes or no. I mean, or if not, like, I'm moving on to the next. This is not about getting my feelings hurt. And so finally somebody asked him for a personal favor. I was told I had an hour to pitch Aaron. I showed up in Hollywood, I came to Los Angeles. I pitched him. He listened to my story without giving me much register of emotion. And then after I was done, he kind of leaned back in his chair and he had this amused expression on his face. And he's like, I've never met someone so down on their luck and so full of themselves. And it was like, fake it till you make it, man. I have to exude confidence and whatever. Anyway, he decided to write it. And when he came on board, then it was like all these A-list actresses wanted to, be in it. It was like the project that nobody would touch. Now everybody wanted to touch,
That's gold. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Forever I'll be grateful to him. And so that was a moment, just like every other moment, where it's like, I think if you get to this place where you can intellectually prove your thesis to yourself, and that it's going to honor you and honor your life and honor the life of others, then if the only thing that's holding you back is fear or doubt or fear or like this aversion to failure, that's when I believe you really decide like how you're going to fix that, because that's not a good reason to stay on the bench at all. And, I've come up with ways over the years. To be perfectly candid, I dealt with fear a lot early days with medication, pills. And then I got to a point where I got really unhealthy with it, and I'm sober now. And I participated in a 12-step program. And it was like, when I couldn't numb myself out anymore is when I really found what I think are these revolutionary approaches. Not that I've created something revolutionary. They're out there for all of us. It's the tools that are revolutionary. I'm not like an inventor of these tools. It's just that I happened upon them, and they've been so massively transformative in my life that I guess like the path that I'm on right now is really kind of talking about hope and redemption, and then talking about the practical application tools and strategies of how we can confront this part of ourselves that holds us back.
What's so fascinating to me too is that you talk about this point where you're like, okay, what's the monetizable asset here? What's the reinvention? And you knew it was the story to kind of dig yourself out strategically. And what it seems has happened in that process is it's become so much bigger than just you getting yourself out of this hole. It's been, to me, your story has so much underlying purpose and meaning and lesson behind it that I find valuable personally, but so many other people do. And the checking the ego part and just knowing, hey, you were in survival mode. and that survival mode led you to a place where there's only one reason someone lives the life and story that you have, and that is because it needs to be told. I believe. Like, it's so crazy, right?
Mom and Dad that?
What was that?
Can you tell my parents that?
Yeah, I mean, you were just creating, this is your version of what your brothers have done. You crafted this and went and played the role, literally. It's so refreshing to have this real life unfolding of the reinvention. And I think that's where there are times where I remember watching and just being like, wow, she's done, when I was watching the movie. And then it's like, okay, she's done. Nope. And this resilience and what you started off saying with you needed to accomplish something big in order to matter. It seems like that's the fuel that actually ended up saving you to a certain extent, where your intellectual side, your entrepreneurial business mind ended up creating the healing. It's just like this fascinating ball. So Let's dig into a couple of moments where, and watching back and seeing some of the keynotes you've given now, where you're talking to entrepreneurs and business crowds about what you learned, you got to this point where you said something happened to you and you became obsessed and greedy, and you were no longer participating in intelligent growth. I wrote this down because you said my life was massively unsustainable. I tried to match the unsustainability with fill in the blank, drugs, alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's like you were playing it so smart until there was a trigger or something, right?
Where you're like, don't do that.
and so I think that's where that recklessness, I think as entrepreneurs, we can get so full that we feel larger than life. You had the power above the power people. You were the bank. And so what triggered that tipping point, do you think?
I've had some time to reflect on this, and speaking is a great exercise to get to know yourself. And I think what it was is I went out into the world feeling that I wasn't good enough. And that sort of dysfunctional lack really powered me for the first part of my life. Whereas if I had done the work and understood that we build from the inside first, if we want to be healthy in the world, then maybe I wouldn't have crossed that line. But because I went into the world feeling like I wasn't good enough and feeling like the solution to that were these external things, to zeros in my bank account, power as I understood it, which was dominion over people, things, to be somebody, to be surrounded by fancy people, and just all these sort of external shiny things. I thought that was the solution, to this feeling of I'm not good enough. And I kept getting there. And for a while it would fill me up, and then I would normalize, and I was still left with that feeling like, well, you're still not good enough. You're still not good enough. So that's why it was on this, sort of line of infinite returns that I was like continuing to ramp up and not getting there. And then over time, I ramped up so high that I couldn't keep up with it without taking speed to stay up, Xanax to deal with like not sleeping and the anxiety, and, basically on and on and on. It was never going to be good enough because I didn't feel like I was good enough. In the phase 2 part of my life and listen, I can't say that I would have ever done this work on my own. It literally took the Department of Justice, the FBI, the Russian and Italian mob, and the IRS to like teach me a lesson. Like all of those forces had to come down on me. And I was like, fine, I guess it's time to, for a reset. So I'm not sitting here saying like, and then I just looked inside. No, I was really forced into it, and I'd lost everything. And, I had to get sober. And it was then that I started kind of realizing like, wow, like I took it as high as you could take it, and it didn't make the pain go away, and that's what kind of catalyzed this shift of like, okay, well, I want to figure out how to be a free human being, to have freedom from this like internal suffering that no matter how good life gets, you're still kind of wanting more and, all that stuff. So that catalyzed this incredible journey to figuring that out. And like, I'm a really practical person. I'm not like an overly whimsical, like woo-woo person. So when initially like things were brought to me, like the 12 steps or meditation, I was like, look, I don't want to live a monastic life. I don't want to eat one bowl of rice. Like this is not my plan, Then I started doing some research, and I started looking at the science around these things. And, this idea of neuroplasticity and this idea that meditation can really change your brain and create more activity in the rational centers and less activity in the fight or flight. Like then I was like, oh, okay, I can get on board with this,
We sound very similar. Everyone that's listening has heard me say the same exact thing. It was like I was tricked into meditation by learning about the science.
I was tricked to it, but the results are, you can't dispute it.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. I appreciate you too coming clean with what it really took for you to realize, okay, the lesson needs to be learned, that I need to go inside here, because you are as high as you possibly could be, literally, and just figuratively in terms of the power. People were, you witnessed one person lose $100 million at one of your tables in one night, and then you said he actually paid it, the next day, and the buy-in was at $250K, and it's just like, wow. And then not to mention that you're at your apartment, and this was after the mob got involved, and you are held at gunpoint with a gun in your mouth, completely beaten up, and that still wasn't even the full-on realization, like, okay, I surrender. So for people who are listening, and the fact that you went from the United States of America versus Molly Bloom to, and possibly going to prison, to being at the Oscars a couple of years later, your ability to recover, reinvent is incredible. So what would you say to people who, let's say there's someone out there that has given entrepreneurship a shot or has tried their why not now idea, and they've just fallen on their face, maybe publicly, maybe not, but they need to reinvent. They need to reset. They maybe feel like they're underground, worse than ground zero. What's the very first thing that you would say to them?
So first of all, I think it's really, really, really important to take responsibility for it all. Because it wasn't until I took responsibility for, look, I had to look at this and be like, Molly, you can feel sorry for yourself right now because the government took all your money and the IRS charged you taxes on it and you're a convicted felon that can't vote. Or you can understand that you did all of this. These were your choices. And it's not like you grew up on the street needing to hustle to make it work. Like, you had great parents who provided you all the opportunities in the world. Like, this is all you, And it wasn't until then that I was like, then you just get out of victim mode. And you stop blaming and you stop feeling sorry for yourself and you stop complaining and removing all that from, nonsense from your brain. You go, okay, well, then it's also like, here I am. The world's wide open. I can try it again. And by the way, here's the antidote to the anxiety of what if it doesn't work? Just never stop trying. Just decide that you're just going to keep moving the needle until something happens. I guarantee that it will.
Yeah, Aaron Sorkin meeting, right?
I promise it might not look like what you thought it originally would look like, but if you just get a little humorous about it and just be like, I'm going to be like those bath toys that you wind up and they'll just keep swimming even if it's right at the wall, I'm never going to stop. And that, for me, when you're laying in bed and you're thinking well, what if I never do anything? What if I'm a failure and this is over and everything? The greatest antidote to that is no, I just don't accept that. So then the path becomes simple, not easy, but simple. That means that you're just going to keep trying until it does. And if you ever start to doubt yourself, something I like to do is I like to have this place where inspiration lives, whether it's movies or music or incredible YouTube videos about people that have taught themselves to walk again, or Malala, or these, Serena Williams, Nike commercials, whatever it is that can jumpstart you out of it's impossible. I think that that's a really good tool to have. I think there's tools in the short term and tools in the long term. And I think the point is that you just keep cycling through it until you can get your butt out of bed and move the needle. It's just deciding that you're not going to give up and you're not going to accept defeat and that you've got one guaranteed life and you're going to make it work.
I love the antidote of anxiety is to never stop trying. Just keep going. So I'd love to get tactical for a second. Your ability to network clearly is stellar. And that word is, it carries such an interesting connotation with it, but you've also talked about community and building community because you did, with some of the most powerful individuals in the world. What can you share about that topic of connecting with like-minded people and networking or building community, whatever we want to call it?
Okay, so I think that we make networking a bit too complicated and we get too in our heads about it. And I think the thing that works the best is basically just stop thinking about yourself so much, right? Like go into a social situation and don't be thinking about, I've got to be so intentional and strategic here about who I meet. And like, I need to make sure that there's this checklist. Like go in with, I think, cultivating an authentic curiosity about who is in the world, who you're sharing the space with, who's in the world, and like not making it about like this zero sum game. Like figure out who someone is, get to know them, and sideline your agenda for a second, because people can sniff out agenda, you know? Mm-hmm. Remembering to be a human being again, and remembering that we're social animals, and that people really like to feel heard. And that's a really limited commodity in the world today. So if you could just listen to someone without having an agenda, I think that that is really huge. So many people, when they network, they try to pitch themselves, you know, they try to like show how valuable they are. And there's a time for that, right? But like in those early stages, like let someone else talk, figure out who they are, compliment in an authentic way the cool things that you're learning. Be like just a kind person. You know, I just think that a lot of networking has become so like icky kind of, you know, like everyone's like, what does this person want from me? And what is this person trying to gain? And everyone's wearing that on their sleeve. And I think that you're really kind of missing out on the connection that you could be making, you know?
It's such good tangible advice, especially when we look at all of these social networking platforms and LinkedIn and people wanting to find mentors. And it gets so formal and icky and contrived. And I think, you know, one of your X factors seems to me to be that you were able to pull people together who are constantly being fed by that external spotlight and make them feel as they're being seen and heard, and there's nothing more valuable. And for you to realize that as you had your cocktail servers memorizing their drinks and whatever you could, you built a multi-million-dollar business around allowing people, to be seen and heard, probably the people who are feeling the most isolated, ironically. But it's so simple. Like these are basic things, but it's so powerful. So it's amazing. So what's going on now? What are you up to now?
I just got engaged.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And what comes along with that is living in Baltimore.
Ooh, okay.
So I had to leave my beloved Colorado, but my fiance is a really incredible person. He's in recovery as well, and kind of his path was to go back to school to study neuroscience and to study neuroscience and addiction. So we're in Baltimore because the National Institute of Health is here, and he's doing that research. And so we just got engaged. We want to start a family. And on the career front, it's so weird for me to talk about like boys and babies first before career, by the way.
Good for you. That's okay. This is a positive thing.
It was part of recovery to be like, okay, I've been psychotically ambitious my whole life, and I have forgotten, because I wanted to be a feminist, because I wanted to be so strong, I've forgotten that it's the connections we make that matter, you know? So it's different, but it's good. Career-wise, I'm writing another book, and this one is, I feel like Molly's Game was to save my life, and this next one is to illuminate the path for others. If they're like people that are in it, like that are struggling or whatever, I just want to talk about my experience. And of course, like I never want anything to be too serious because it's too heavy. So it's kind of like also a funny memoir about trying to find yourself while Hollywood's making a movie about you. So there's good like Hollywood anecdotal stories and everything. But so I'm writing that book. I'm developing a show. It's called Redemption with Molly Bloom. And it's about basically we're going and interviewing high-profile people that have had these really sort of public falls from grace and that have found a way to come back from them really talking, kind of getting to the guts of it. And then I'm really looking for a way to create in a scalable way a community like I find in a 12-step program, because I'm fascinated with transformation. And I'm fascinated with this concept that we had previously thought that as adults, like our brains and our habits are fixed and it's really almost impossible to change them. And I have seen that that's not the case. And the place that I see it the most is in a 12-step room, because you see people crawl in the door. They're shaking. They've basically lost their entire life, like way worse than me. They're homeless. They're this, they're that. They've been homeless for years. You know, their brains barely work. Like they're checked out. They're just like hungry ghosts, you know? And you see these people that follow this program and not only reclaim their life, but thrive in an insane way. So like, I'm so fascinated with this concept of transformation and these things that we can do to completely change our life. And I think a huge part of it is building communities building community around this. And then also a community that works sort of like a 12-step program where someone goes through a program, they get saved, and they turn around and reach out and help someone else, you know? And I think that we're in this very unprecedented time where these things can live in a very big way online. And I feel like it's kind of what we're all looking for when we're on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, is that connection, that antidote to loneliness, that, you know what I mean? So like, I'm very interested in building social networks or social communities around this. I just don't know how exactly or at all how to do it yet. So I'm really in idea phase, but it's something that's so worthwhile to pursue. And like I said, like I was there, I made so much money and everyone around me made so much money and we were all miserable. So in a way, I'm kind of liberated from that quest. Like I'm always going to want to do well financially and be financially independent and like, you know, have nice things. But like the goal of my life is not to amass large portions of wealth anymore. It's to make a difference in the world. And that's kind of a fun place to be for, you know, the second act.
Absolutely. And the ultimate luxury, really. I mean, you call it the second act, but I think this is this is when it's all starting. I mean, what you've been through and what you've shared is like a little precursor, I think, because this is the real impact. This is the thunder after the lightning, per se. And I'm so glad to hear that you're doing the work that you're doing. I was hoping you were writing another book, but also just the, you know, transcending into how you can help other people navigate and guide this at scale. And in addition, with your future husband, who has probably a lot that he's going to be able to offer to the formula.
For sure.
So I can imagine what conversations you're having around the dinner table. But it's just, I really resonate with your story, Molly, and I just have to share, it hit me so impactfully. I don't even know if that's a phrase. It really resonated with me when you talked about how you've kind of fell over into this obsession greedy mode. I've been at places in my life where having my clients were some of the biggest movie stars in the world, and I hit that adrenaline addiction. And when you said, you know, you're massively unsustainable and you're trying to match it with all these different things. And I checked every box of dysfunction with trying to do the same. And I think it's refreshing to have seen that now I know that's not something I want to chase anymore. But so many people haven't necessarily had that luxury of getting so close to the fire that hopefully you can prevent them from even chasing that carrot.
And it's hard. It's hard because I know before I had this experience, people would be like, money doesn't buy you happiness, and it's not. And I'm like, shut up. That's such a lie, you know? And so like I had to see it for myself, and some people have to see it for themselves, but that doesn't mean you don't try to impart your experience, you know? And the things that I love to do, the way that like my brain wants to work is I'm a strategist, you know, and I'm a builder and I'm a networker. And so to be able to apply these things to humanity, to helping other people that are in it, is like, it satisfies that sort of, you know, what my brain wants to do. And then it satisfies like a deeper part of me, which wants to never go back to living in that way. And there's no shame about it. I mean, ambition is hard sometimes it becomes untethered. It's like such a great gift, but it's hard to maintain sometimes. And it can definitely get out of control. And to be able to get ahead of that, man, you save yourself a lot of years, of cleaning up the messes or spending time in that sort of like hypomanic state where the rest of you're only making one thing work and the rest of it doesn't. And you start to like feel that emptiness and loneliness. And that's where all the sort of mental health stuff comes in,
I sometimes refer to myself as a recovering hustler where, I'd subscribe. When you said psychotically ambitious, I was like, oh shit, that's totally where I was, where you just blinders, doesn't matter at all costs, like keep going. And
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we celebrate and elevate that mentality, especially around entrepreneurship, that it's romantic to grind, to hustle, to chase. And it's dangerous game.
It's inefficient.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like when you look at the physiological aspect and the psychological, for sure. Absolutely.
It's inefficient. It's bad strategy.
Yeah, that's a great point. So just a couple of quick rapid fire questions for you. What's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over?
God, so many. So when I feel uncomfortable or I don't like the way I feel, I am constantly trying to change it. And my solutions for changing it have become a lot less scandalous. It's not like drugs and men and money anymore, but it's like too much coffee or sugar or whatever. And so I just keep trying to remember that when you don't like the way you feel, just sit with it. Closing all the back doors, getting rid of all the babysitters and just feeling what you're feeling and not feeling this need to escape it or chase something else or whatever, just to be, that when I can do that, it's a really peaceful and efficient way to live.
Oh, like sitting with that tension, that pain and working through it versus the Band-Aids. Amazing.
As opposed to like, you're just running from it. You're reaching for this. You're reaching for that. I mean, it's just like, just face it. Just straight through it,
Back to efficiency there too. Very strategic minded. And what keeps you up at night?
Nothing. I used to be the worst insomniac, like the worst from the time, like from birth. And I've been meditating for 2 years and you cannot keep me up when my head hits the pillow.
Nice.
What do I worry about? I don't really worry about that much right now. I'm in a really good place with that. I think meditation has changed my brain because I was in a constant state of worry before meditation.
And just to dive in for a second on that topic, what kind of practice do you have?
Oh my God, everybody asks me that. And it's like, here's what I feel so compelled to say. There's this stigma around meditation that you need to like totally know what you're doing and be able to sit in lotus and all this stuff. And like, so when I first started meditating, someone said like, you need to sit for 20 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, right. So what I was told was just sit and focus on your breath. So I started the first day with 30 seconds and then I built the next day to a minute. And over time, I got up to 5 minutes and then I downloaded an app that probably you know about called Headspace.
Yes, they're a partner of this show. We've had Andy Puddicombe on this show too. That's where this is exactly how I started too.
Do you know that like I like need to do something for Andy in life? Like
I know, doesn't everyone?
Like a gift or something to change my life. So Headspace, and now again, like I don't do the fancy breathing stuff. I just do what I learned from Headspace, which is try to rein in that brain, that mind of like focus on breath. If the thoughts come, let them just be and bring it back to the breath. And what that has allowed me to do over time is when the fear comes up, when the doubt comes up, when, all the monkey mind comes up, 9 times out of 10 now I don't attach to it. And that is revolutionary. That has allowed me to navigate the world and be more efficient and get more done and be braver than before.
That's the real work, right? That's the only work. It's incredible. Thank you for sharing because like you. I was like, whatever, meditation. Like, this isn't for me, but it's incredible. And do you have an all-time favorite book?
I don't have an all-time favorite book. It definitely changes at times. Just depends on, where I'm at because of the focus of the last 2 years. Sometimes I'm in a place where I need to be creative, so I'm reading fiction or I need inspiration. But in the last 2 years, it's been really kind of learning about how we transform our minds, how we liberate our minds, how we deal with trauma, all that kind of stuff. And I guess my favorite book that I've read in the last 2 years is When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, because she's this American Tibetan nun who speaks in very clear language. It's not very airy, she curses. But she has so much wisdom around these concepts of like, learn how to sit with it. And, it's practical spirituality. It's practical things you can do to kind of escape that cycle of suffering in your mind, stuff like that. And I think it's one of those books that you read and then you bring it out into the world constantly. It stays with you and it continues to teach you,
Absolutely. Love it. I'm going to have to check that out for sure. Pirates or ninjas, Molly? Who's tougher and why?
Ninjas. They have control over their mind, right?
There you go.
They've learned discipline. Pirates are like renegades. Trust me, I'm all about the pirates too. I've been one in my life. But I think at this point, like, I got to go with the ninjas,
Yes, I hear you. I'm team pirates.
Well, pirates are definitely cooler.
And I wrote a book called Renegades Write the Rules, so I'm even more team pirates. But I hear you. I think there's a mix. I'd like to see them mate and see what they procreate.
Or like get those pirates to start meditating a little, and then I'll jump ship,
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is good. Call Aaron Sorkin. And final question.
It just is a winner.
Gold right there. I mean, absolutely. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I'm going to be like a broken record with this, but I really, because that girl went into the world not really knowing much about who she was and wanting to just fill that hole at any cost, I would really have encouraged her to, maybe do start a meditation practice, read certain books. I don't know if it would have helped. I don't know if that girl would have sat down and meditated, but I just think about it like, what if at 23 I know what I know now, and I still had that like psychotic ambition that could be roped in, and I didn't have to do all the like crappy suffering, like that's what I would do. I would try to encourage her to embark on this journey of of looking at yourself and fixing the things that don't work, that don't serve,
Absolutely. It's, I would like to tell my younger self the same thing. It's always an inside job.
Always an
chase every possible external factor, but it never ends up being enough. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. I can't wait to see more of your journey unfold, because I really do think you're just getting started. And
you're right.
And like I said, it's refreshing. I appreciate your candid nature too, because you call it like you see it. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me so much.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins, and of course a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time, and until then, why not now?